For the first time since 2015, that's right, I got this one right, the Tampa Bay Lightning are going back to the Stanley Cup final after eliminating the New York Islanders in 6 games. Now, of course, I got the last one wrong with Dallas. I totally forgot, actually, Dallas went back to the Cup final next year after 99. They lost to New Jersey, who then went back to the Cup final the next year. The late 90s were weird with teams going back to the final time and time again. Detroit, New Jersey, Dallas, you get the point. And you also get the point here. Tampa going back to the final. Now, there is a lot I want to talk about in this video, mainly because, unlike in the Dallas video the other day, where they were the sole, topic of discussion, there isn't as much I can say about the Lightning. So we're going to hit on a couple of other points here towards the end of the video. But before we get into this Tampa team, what their journey has been, and what they need to do in the Cup final to win the Stanley Cup, I do want to talk about the New York Islanders, and in a way I want to talk about the Washington Capitals as well, because they are very much intertwined. So, first and foremost, to the Islanders, job well done. Job well done. And there were a lot of Leafs fans last night being like, oh boy, they sure could have used someone like a John Tavares. And it's like, okay, like, I get it. Islanders fans have been throwing shade, Leafs fans throwing shade, but, Leafs fans, you have been punching up lately. And I think that's a problem. Like, even I'm not even saying that as a Bruins fan to just take a shot at Leafs fans. It's like, Leafs fans, come on. Like, come on, though. Like, you can understand why Islanders fans, I mean, maybe not some of the more obnoxious ones, but why this was particularly sweet for Islanders fans, again. But the point being, it's been incredible to see what they accomplished, this season, this postseason, I should say. Where, do you expect them to get past Washington? No. Do you expect them to get past Philadelphia? No. Okay, maybe Washington, and we'll get into that. Do you expect them to get past Tampa? No. Push it to 6 games even? Probably not. So it's been an incredible season for them. Now, I will say, and this is actually one thing that people wanted me to talk about, and I kind of touched up upon it on stream last night. The Islanders are in a really rough spot right now, where they don't have a ton of cap. They don't have their first and second in this year's draft. And they have some pretty big contracts to worry about. Now, Martin, Kuhnhackl, Brassard, but Matt Barzal needs to get paid. And he's going to get paid. Ryan Pulock needs to get paid. And he's going to get paid. Thomas Greiss is leaving. There's no way you give Ilya Sorokin $2 million if you're not going to keep, if you're keeping Thomas Greiss. There's no way. And Greiss flat out, I mean, you look at these numbers here in particular. Sure, last year's postseason start was brutal, but you look at these numbers, Thomas Greiss can get more than $2 million, and the Islanders can't offer him that right now. So, yeah, is it going to be a very interesting offseason for the Islanders? Definitely, but it's just been an amazing run for that team, and I think it's pretty tough to not have confidence in where that team is going. There we go. There's the Mainer coming out in me. It's tough to not have some confidence in where this team is going, because of the man at the helm, Barry Trotz. So, I mean, credit to him. I get that the Islanders weren't necessarily, like, deadlocked into a playoff spot, but that was a team, again, much like Dallas, where you have a full buy-in. Everyone believes in what that team is capable of, and unfortunately for them, they just ran into a buzzsaw. The Capitals had their own issues. The Flyers kind of ran out of gas and weren't as much, I think, of a buzzsaw as people thought. Because when you compare the Flyers to the Lightning, then you really see what that kind of buzzsaw is like. The true, even Vegas. You look at Vegas and think of them as the buzzsaw in the West, but then you think out of Philly, Vegas, Tampa, Colorado, what's that one team where you'd say, if I had to bet one game, they're going to win it? It's Tampa. And thus the Islanders run out of steam. So, hell of a season for them. Before talking about Tampa, though, because I did just mention them, there's a couple other, like I said, hockey topics I want to talk about that I couldn't really make my own video for because I don't have a long enough opinion on the subject matter. And the first thing is that the Washington Capitals have hired Peter Laviolette as opposed to bringing in the likes of, interestingly enough, Mike Babcock or Gerard Gallant. Now, I'll say this. Mike Milbury? Jesus. Yeah, Mike Milbury would have been a great fit. Mike Babcock would not have been a great fit for that team. I don't think anyone really expects that. I don't know what a good fit for Mike Babcock looks like in 2020, heading into 2021. I have no idea if he's a fit to be an NHL coach at this stage. I don't. So I think for the Capitals, it's nice to avoid that. It seemingly came down to Laviolette and Gerard Gallant. And at the end of the day, the overwhelming consensus seems to be that they need a disciplinarian as opposed to a player's coach. And Gerard Gallant is more of a player's coach. Not that I don't think he couldn't crack the whip necessarily, but if you look at someone who I guess could be a little bit more authoritarian, someone who has the pedigree, I think Peter Laviolette does win in that regard. 3 appearances in the Cup final. He won one with Carolina back in 2006. So we certainly know what he's capable of. Should have been the Bruins head coach in the mid-2000s. That would have been great. At the end of the day, though, as much as that's a win for the Caps to get a coach who's probably going to be a pretty good fit, it's a major loss for the Caps. And this ties back to the Islanders. Barry Trotz. The Capitals elect not to pay Barry Trotz. You go with Todd Reardon, doesn't work, and now you're splashing the cash on Peter Laviolette. So, if I'm a Caps fan, you got your cup, and that's great. But at the end of the day, and I can tell you this as a Patriots fan, I can tell you this as a Bruins fan, the end of the day, no matter how much you win, it is going to be the ones that got away that kind of stick out in the back of your mind. That Cup win's always going to be amazing. For me, 2011, I'm always going to remember it. 2013, though, it's not it's not a current overwhelming feeling, but yeah, there is the feeling that the Bruins blew it in 2013. You don't give up 2 goals in 13 seconds. You go to Game 7 in Chicago. Who knows what happens? Look at what happened in 2011 against the Canucks. Last year, Game 7, home ice, and you blew it. And that sucks. Congrats to the Blues, by the way. Your time with the Cup is almost over. Isn't that fucking crazy? You got extra time with it. But, and again, I've said this before. If it wasn't Bruins and Blues, I would have been rooting for the Blues. But, it's going to be those losses that stand out. In the past 2 years for Washington, there's always going to be a what if. There is. If they had just paid Barry Trotz, what would the Capitals have done over the last 2 years? Is it possible that Washington could have won the Cup last year or this year? Absolutely. Instead, 2 first-round exits because you didn't want to pay your coach, and now you're paying Peter Laviolette. And look at what happens with the Islanders with Barry Trotz. That is the Barry Trotz effect, summed up right there. The Islanders, pretty good team, not that good. Not that good. That is the coach, his systems, and the players buying in. So I hate to tie so much of the Islanders' success into what's going on in Washington, but obviously they are very much intertwined. Again, to the Islanders, one hell of a run. To their fans, hey, obviously it's a tough pill to swallow. Obviously there's going to be some back and forth with Leafs fans about Tavares, and, you sure could have used him and shit like that. I've already seen that. At the end of the day, though, hell of a run. And you ran into a team that, well, let's be honest, the Blue Jackets, who beat them last year, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Not even close. Aside from the ridiculous overtime game, which feels like it was 6 years ago already. They made it past the Bruins in convincing fashion again. And I'll flat out admit the Islanders, probably put up a better fight because I think in some ways the Islanders might be better well-suited to play Tampa, or some people say the Islanders got lucky, but Tampa's very well-suited to play Boston, especially a Bruins team that wasn't on top of their game. Not making excuses, but you look at the Bruins that played after the restart compared to the Bruins in March, totally different things. Also, fuck Brandon Prust for continuing to throw out nonsense about Tuukka Rask. I'm sorry. I don't even like to mention people who aren't worth my time, which he isn't. But don't give irrelevant people your time. And that's right. I called a millionaire former NHL player irrelevant because he has nothing better to do than sit on Twitter all day and talk shit because no one else will pay attention to him otherwise because he dedicated his entire life to hockey, never really did anything aside from be a goon. And now he's got to find some way to stay relevant. So good on you, Brandon Prust. And then, of course, the Lightning run into the Islanders, which, again, I talked about in the Dallas video. You have Dallas and the Islanders, and I didn't buy into the narrative that, 2 defensive teams, it's going to be a boring final. I didn't buy into that shit. But the problem is, as good as a unit as the Islanders are, and there were some injuries that ran into it, apparently. Adam Pelech would have been out for the rest of the postseason. Casey Cizikas was playing with a severe injury. Obviously, you hear that with every team. It's not an excuse. It's Tampa won, and they should have. So don't get defensive about that. But, you get one of the 2 major, defensive teams, and they just get cut down by Tampa. I talked about it in that video what Dallas has to do, and for Tampa, what do you have to do? It's more of the same. And that's why I can't have this video just be about the Tampa Bay Lightning, because what are the keys? Just keep doing what you're doing. Stay healthy and keep doing what you're doing. And I don't know if Dallas has the ability to necessarily hold off. The key for Dallas is definitely to make the most of their opportunities, and the argument is that Dallas has more offensive firepower to do that than the Islanders, and that could be where their opening comes from. I mean, again, Brock Nelson almost won the game, Game 6 for the Islanders in overtime. It didn't quite happen. So I'm intrigued by that matchup. But for Tampa, really, it's just more of the same. Just stay healthy, I would say, is the key thing for them. And, I mean, you look at these lines here. I mean, obviously, Palat, Point, Kucherov, a big thing. Braden Point has to stay healthy. But this team is ridiculous. I mean, you give up first-round picks for Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman. Is that worth it? Right now, yeah. You made it to the Cup final. It's absolutely worth it. It's especially worth it if you win. And then obviously, I guess they were running 7 defensemen last night because Luke Shen was listed. But defensively, too, you know, Shattenkirk, obviously on that cheap-ass deal. Bogosian hasn't been great, but still an extremely cheap deal. And then obviously Vasi's been strong. You know, I'm intrigued at whether or not Steven Stamkos ends up making it. You know, apparently he's been practicing, but we don't yet know if he's going to play. I don't even know. Like, there are two schools of thought. Steven Stamkos, is he going to be able to step into the Stanley Cup final and play at the level he needs to play versus, holy shit, the Lightning are getting Steven Stamkos. How the hell are they possibly going to lose? I mean, we might find out, we might not. I have no idea. I mean, you look at this Lightning team right now, and obviously they've been playing very, very angry. They were embarrassed last year, and they don't want it to happen again. And secondary scoring has been key. You know, the defensive ability has been key. And it's funny because in 2015, as much as it was about the Hawks, you know, one last stand, which ultimately it was, you know, it was also a lot about Tampa. They should win, but then the injuries, they just kind of fell off. Obviously, Stamkos, Bishop, Tyler Johnson as well. Wasn't at 100%, or they weren't at 100%, and it ultimately cost that team a really good chance to win the Cup. But this year now, like overall, this team, it's significantly better than that 2015 team, in my opinion. Again, some of those cheap contracts, very much a part of that. Secondary scoring's a little bit better than what it was, and I talked about that a lot too for the Dallas Stars. You talk about the bottom 6. Okay, well, they don't exactly play the most offensive role, but you still need those guys to contribute. That is why Tampa has been as ridiculous as they are, is because, sure, Patrick Maroon only has 4 points, Goodrow with 5, but you look back at this 2015 team that made the Cup final, and you look over here and you see a severe lack of secondary scoring. I mean, Brian Boyle, 2 points. JT Brown, 2 points. Paquette, never much of a goal scorer, but he didn't do much. Nemesnikov, a younger Nemesnikov, 1 point in 12 games. Brandon Morrow played every single game, didn't register a point at the tail end of his career. So everything about this Tampa team, the secondary scoring, you look at the defense. I mean, Mark Barberio only played a game. Andre Schuster, actually Morrow didn't play every game, they played 26. But Andre Schuster was on this team. Matt Carl, Nikita Nestorov, Jason Garrison. This Tampa team is significantly better than that one in 2015 that everyone viewed with extremely high hopes. So, like I said, for the Lightning, it really does just come down to stay healthy and keep doing what you're doing. But obviously, I think they have to be a little bit more careful. Like I said, you could have the argument over what team is more dangerous, right? Because if you look at this Dallas lineup and you look at this Islanders lineup, right? So the last lineup that the Stars ran, is that more dangerous offensively up and down the lineup than what the Islanders ran? And honestly, I'd have to say yes. I mean, you know, you can't discount the offensive capabilities of Anders Lee and Matt Barzal, but Cal Clutterbuck, can't discount what Josh Bailey did this postseason, an assist machine. Nelson and Beauvillier, that's a really solid line. But then you get down into the bottom 6. I like Pajot and Eberle, but Matt Martin scored goals in the playoffs, but still, obviously Komarov. Dobson was a 7th defenseman for them because of the injuries that they had. It's tough. I would probably say that Stars lineup has a little bit more offensive potency at times than the Islanders lineup did. So Tampa, that's one spot where they could get in trouble, is, you know, some of the chances that they give up. You know, even if the Stars are only getting 20 shots a night, all they have to do is capitalize on a couple of them, and even then the Lightning lineup might not be able to produce as they need to produce. But when it comes down to that Cup final, like I said, I talked about what the Stars have to do for the Lightning. It's pretty straightforward. Just keep doing what you're doing, play your game, stay healthy. The Lightning are favorites for a reason. People asked me, as I dropped my pen on my keyboard, people asked me, who am I going for in this? In terms of who I'd prefer to see win, I don't necessarily have a preference. I'll be honest with you. There are players on both teams that I'd like to see get a Stanley Cup. Ryan McDonough is a big player for me who I'd like to see get a Stanley Cup for the Lightning. In a way, it'd be kind of cool to see Luke Schenn get a Stanley Cup. Patrick Maroon winning 2 in a row would certainly be interesting. And it's tough to say that amazing players like Kucherov, Point, Hedman don't deserve it. On the flip side, for Dallas, I don't know why Elite Prospects is taking so long, but on the flip side for Dallas, obviously, there are players who I'd like to see win a Stanley Cup at this point. Wow, their site's taking forever. They boot me off of it. Joe Pavelski, of course, is probably the biggest name on that list. Whew. Wow, that is... Did my internet die? No, there we go. But obviously, Anton Khudobin, it's tough not to root for the former Bruin. He hasn't been able to play much, but Stephen Johns getting a cup ring after what he's been through would be pretty ridiculous. Jamie Benn, man, is a hell of a player. Cogliano, I mean, there's a lot of guys on these teams where I'm like, yeah, I'd like to see them with the cup. I gotta be honest. It's really tough because I also don't believe in, the team that beat my team, I want them to win because then it makes my team look better. I don't believe in that. I genuinely don't think at this point in time I have a preferred team to win. I'm cool if Tampa wins it. They're an amazing team. I'm also cool if Dallas wins it. Dallas is the underdog in this. They've won in my lifetime, as have Tampa. It would have been a little bit different. If Vegas made it or if the Islanders made it, 100% I'd be rooting for them. So for this one, it's kind of a tough call. I got to be honest. Who do I think's going to win? I mean, you got to. The smart money's Tampa. You got to vote for Tampa. But that's not to say the Dallas Stars can't win. Aside from that, a couple of other things I wanted to talk about here. Speaking of Washington, I don't deal in rumors, but Alex Ovechkin rumored to get $10+ million. Cool. He deserves it. The Oilers, or at least Edmonton's going to be hosting the World Juniors, which, cool. All the other lower levels, except for the Big East World Juniors are going on. That's a little bit weird, but hey, whatever, it's the world we live in. Shout out, and again, I don't know how to say his name correctly, but Yannick Duplessis, I guess it is. You've probably heard that name. And credit to you. It's weird to say young man. I'm 26. But again, for anybody who likes to pretend that there aren't or that there isn't LGBTQ representation within hockey, you're wrong. And hopefully his decision, I guess he was forced to come out essentially. But hey, his decision to just accept it and put it out there, you're going to start seeing more of that soon. And rightfully so. It's long time. I mean, but again, at the end of the day too, yeah. Obviously, the conversation is hey, no one should be made to feel like they have to, but no one should be made to feel like, oh, you're going to have to feel uncomfortable if you do, is the point. But again, nice to see that at the very least. And nice to see the hockey community, Brian Burke as well. Obviously, if you know anything about Brian Burke and his son, it's a very touchy subject and one that hits close to home. So, hey, fair play to him as I punch a remote as well. I'm just falling apart here. And other things I want to talk about really quickly. Certain signings, certain trades that I was asked about recently. So, Aube-Kubel, I don't have too much to say about. Edmondson, who was, of course, acquired from Carolina for, I believe, a 5th-round pick. To me, honestly, it's a risky deal. I know that the Ben Sherratt contract worked out for the Habs. But until further notice, the Joel Edmondson deal is a bit for me. I mean, again, a modified no-trade clause, 10-team no-trade list, $3.5 million for 4 years. I don't know about that one, Chief. I don't know. I know the Caps, or I know that the Habs have cap space to spend. You only have to re-sign Charles Dawn. Max Domi will probably be coming back. Nobody else is going to take up that much money for you. But that's interesting. I mean, again, you look at that team right now. Obviously, Weber, Petrie locked in. Sherratt's locked into the top 4. Brett Kulak played really well in the playoffs for the Habs. Then you have Romanov, Mete, Folan, Obviously, Cale Fleury is going to be battling there. How much did you really need Joel Edmondson to shore things up? How much does Joel Edmondson really necessarily shore things up to begin with? In terms of offensive production, he's not the worst. Point totals aren't everything, right? Like at times, like, okay, he put up 20 points this year, probably would have hit maybe close to 25. That's solid. That would have been a career high. His transition game, I honestly don't know enough about, but he's not known for it. And defensively, just how good is he defensively? Obviously, he brings a physical edge, and as a result, hey, the guy takes a lot of penalty minutes too. Is that where you want to be if you're the Habs? I don't know. But like I said, I don't know how much that helps the Habs. And to me, you're stocked for this upcoming draft. I really don't see the reason. Like, if you're me, I don't go for Edmondson, and I don't make the trade for Jake Allen. If you wanted to bring in another goalie who can take the pressure off of Carey Price, and you're going to pay $15 million for goaltending just about, fucking spend more money on the free agent market on a goalie for someone who's a little bit more of a sure thing than Jake Allen. And honestly, defensively, for me, Weber, Petrie, Sherratt, Kulak, Romanoff, Mete, like, unless you're not planning on playing Romanoff, but I'm sure you are, I don't really see the point of getting Edmondson. I don't. I genuinely don't. And if you wanted another defenseman, get somebody back in the Max Domi, trade Max Domi, who apparently you don't want to bring back anyway for what he's asking for. Use Max Domi and one of these guys to get a defenseman. There just seems like a lot of other moves they could have done. It seems weird to me that the same general manager who didn't want to spend money on someone who might win a Stanley Cup this year, and Alex Radulov, is like, yeah, fuck it, $3.5 million to Edmondson. Again, he could end up being great for the Habs. Sure, I'm just saying, if I'm a Habs fan, I don't know about that one, Chief. Speaking of I don't know about that one, Chief, Jonas Brodin. I like Jonas Brodin. I understand that he is arguably an elite defensive defenseman. I'm uncertain of his transition game, which is key. And that really, for NHL defensemen, I break it down to 3 points. Point production, transition game, how good you are in your own zone. Undeniable, he's great in his own zone. I'm uncertain of the transition game. There is some point production there, right? So I'm not saying in theory that a $6 million cap hit is necessarily that bad. 7 years, though. 7 by 6. I'm intrigued. And again, you look at the points, he's good for 20 to 30, which is solid. At best, he's good for 20 to 30. He's a solid, elite defenseman. But there's just something about Minnesota, and obviously there's a trade coming up, and we'll talk about it now. Fuck it. They just traded Eric Staal for Marcus Johansson, which I don't know about that trade either. They also acquired Nick Bjugstad for absolutely nothing, a conditional 7th. So, for Minnesota, like, my question is this, it's just why? Like, Bill Guerin just feels like Paul Fenton 2.0 to me so far. He really does. They have cap space coming up. Obviously, like, Jordan Greenwell will be signed. Galchenyuk's going to go, for sure. Probably to the KHL. We have no idea what they're going to do with Mikko Koivu. Sturm might be let go, he might not be. Cunnin will probably be signed. And then, of course, there's the rumors of Matt Dumba getting traded. So I get that you want to trade Matt Dumba, and essentially his money is going to go to Jonas, and that's fine. But like I said, it's just there's something about it with Brodin where it's just, it feels like you probably could have gotten him for cheaper. And I feel like for Minnesota, a team that's still handcuffed and handicapped by the Suter deal and the Parise deal, a team that's still in a decent amount of, could be in a decent amount of trouble because, again, you got to factor COVID into all of this. You do. Same with Montreal. You might want to be careful with some of the money that you hand out, especially long term, because we don't know when things are going to get back on track in terms of the salary cap going up. We don't know. So I'm just saying, these are a bit of a risk. I mean, I do like that top 4 for Minnesota, but again, apparently they're going to trade Dumba, which fucking why is my opinion. But apparently they're going to trade Dumba. Like, I know he might not be the best in his own defensive zone, but still, I don't know. And then the Eric Staal thing, like, look, I get that he's 35. I get that he's slowing down. Eric Staal is objectively still a better player than Marcus Johansson. And the thing here is, I mean, sure, Mojo, 1 year left, whatever. He's not that great of a center. He's a much better winger. I can attest to that as a Bruins fan. I don't know. I'd rather have, I guess it makes more sense if Mojo was signed long-term. I don't understand it. I'd rather have Eric Staal right now than Marcus Johansson. Have the wheels fallen off on Eric Stahl? Who knows? By the time he gets back to playing, maybe. But in terms of most numbers, you're going to see Eric Stahl with the advantage there. I don't get the point of this for Minnesota. Like, do you feel Marcus Johansson's going to be the better player for you now? Like, I'd understand it if you got like a pick or a prospect back, but I do not understand the 1-for-1. So the Brodin deal, we'll see. Again, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. But again, maybe I just don't like. It's the big question mark about his transition game, because you can be elite in your own zone, but if you can't consistently get it out of your own zone and get it up ice, what good is that? You're Martin Marincin. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Minnesota right now, and it's weird. It's weird. Maybe it'll work out. And Nick Bjugstad you got for literally nothing, so why not? So I mean, I guess you could view it as Eric Stahl and a 7th for Nick Bjugstad and Marcus Johansson, which makes it sound a lot better, I'll admit. But I don't know, there's some weird stuff going on in Minnesota. Aside from that, I mean, Adin Hill, good deal. Sean Walker, good deal. For the most part, it's going to keep getting crazier, for sure. It's going to keep getting crazier, for sure. With that, I think I've ranted and rambled for long enough. Yeah, let me know what you think about everything we talked about here, and we will see what happens. Dallas and Tampa, who do you got in the Cup final? I still don't think I can root for one team over another. I'm just intrigued to see who wins, and I'm intrigued to see just how ridiculous things are going to be at the start of next month. The draft, free agency, it's going to be nuts.